Madam Toastmaster, my fellow Toastmasters, visitors and friends, this is not the promised land. Tonight, as we celebrate the history of the greatest people on earth, I am reminded not only of the positive moments that mark the timetable of our exodus from the hideous institution of American slavery down through the racial values of segregation and Jim Crow, across the ever-flowing rivers of inequality and social injustice, all the way to the foot of the mountain of hope and freedom, where Dr. King was granted the opportunity to look over and catch a fleeting glance of the promised land. I'm not only reminded tonight of the great contributions made by all our celebrated heroes, such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., winner of the Nobel Prize and devout advocate of nonviolent resistance, the endless efforts of Brother Malcolm Shabazz, known to most as Malcolm X, whose revolutionary mind encouraged us to seek freedom and justice by whatever means necessary. And then many others such as Marcus Garvey, Medgar Evers, Elijah Muhammad, and Detroit's own beloved Rosa Parks, who added the color to the pages of our history through the brightness and beauty of their being. I am not only reminded of them tonight, but I am also reminded of the many uncelebrated heroes who did not give their lives for the cause of our struggle, but died as innocent victims during the course of our struggle. I am reminded tonight of August 28, 1955, when a 14-year-old boy from Chicago, Illinois, called Bobo, went down to Money, Mississippi to visit friends and relatives, only to become the victim of the most hideous murder recorded in the archives of American history. His crime, whistling at a white woman. A boy whose death served as one of the primary motivators for the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement. That boy called Bobo was Emmett Till. I'm reminded of September 15, 1963, when Addie Mae Collins, age 14, Denise McNair, age 11, Carol Robertson, age 14, and Cynthia Wesley, age 14, all became involuntary martyrs in the March to Freedom, when the enemies of justice bombed the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, and ushered their souls from the basement of inhumanity to the glorious halls of everlasting truth. I am reminded of Jasper, Texas, where on June 7, 1998, James Byrd Jr. was wrapped around his ankles with a heavy logging chain and hooked to a pickup truck, dragged 3 miles across the concrete pavement until his body hit the edge of a culvert and cut off his arm and head. His death helped give life on October 22, 2009 to the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Federal Hate Crime Prevention Act. And if I was preaching a sermon tonight, at this point I would borrow the words of the Hebrew writer Paul, who said, "And these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar, were persuaded of them and embraced them." And I would take it upon myself tonight to say in their behalf that they were just pilgrims and strangers of African descent, traveling through this wilderness of social injustice and moral decay. And as they traveled, they were just pilgrims on their way to the promised land. Tonight, as we celebrate the greatest history that has ever been recorded between the pages of time and eternity, as we remember the heroes, our heroes, that led our march from the cotton fields of Mississippi and Alabama to the Oval Office in the White House in Washington, D.C., as we call the roll of those whom God has granted unmerited favor of executive membership to the Heavenly Hall of Fame, where above the entranceway, the Lord of glory himself had posted a sign that reads, "For colors only." I compel you tonight to take a closer look at the social, moral, and economic and racial disposition of America today, and consider that no matter how far we have come, we have not yet arrived to the promised land. As long as we continue to allow our sons and daughters to disrespect and disregard the educational opportunities for which our fathers died, we have not yet safely arrived into the promised land. As long as we continue to allow the powers that be of, as long as we continue to allow the powers that be outside ourselves to confine and constrain the hopes and dreams of our children to the self-destructive influences of immorality and social insanity that we allow to dictate the course of our present culture, while we stand fearfully and idly by, we cannot process nor enter the promised land. As long as we allow the Willie Lynch mentality that was engrafted into our nature during our imprisonment in the institution of American slavery cause us to continue to function like crabs in the bottom of a barrel, we will never experience the beauty of the promised land. And as long as you know me, and I have a voice to cry out in this wilderness called America, I promise you today that every now and then, not only in February, but in all the other months as well, every now and then, you're going to hear me remind you that we, in spite of what you think, or in spite of what you choose to believe, this is not the promised land. We have not arrived. Thank you, Pastor.